Yeah.
Dear friends, my fellow JU alumni and beyond, namaskar. I could have extended a very warm welcome to you, but since our topic is climate change and global warming, I'm going to choose my words very carefully. I am very thankful to Pamela for coming up with this idea, starting this whole process of getting the word out, having this discussion session with Joy Sridhi. It gives a much needed boost to our sleepy junior. I'm also very thankful to Joyanto and Shuparna for helping us with the YouTube live streaming. I'm thankful to each one of you for joining us today after a busy day's work and talk to one another about this very important issue. It will not be an overstatement if I say that we have committed an intergenerational crime. Our decisions of yesterday, our decisions of today is going to shape the lives of our future generations. Joy Sridhi is the best person to talk about, what that change entails. Our discussion today essentially will start with a presentation given by her, followed by a question-answer discussion session where we can informally talk about, is it only about governments or policymakers, or are there things that we can do as individual human beings to make a difference? So it is really important that we engage with one another in this matter. I have already shared with you her long list of credentials. Suffices to say that she is one of the most passionate person I know on the issue of climate change. And that is why she's the best person to speak to us on this very important matter. When we were talking about this whole planning process, whether to go in for this discussion session, we were concerned, this is a weeknight, people have worked all day, and we were saying, will anyone even join us? And Joy Sridhi said that, even if one person joins us, we are making a difference. So we are talking to one another today in that particular spirit. I will now request Joy Sridhi to lead the discussion.
Thank you, Madhubani. I know you are a friend, so you will say all these good words about me, but I do understand that you are a professional too. So your words mean a lot to me. And I am thankful to Pamela and Madhubani and the whole JU alumni in Boston who thought that this can be an evening discussion point over a cup of tea, coffee, or whatever you like. You can just sit with that. So what I would like to do first is that before I start the formal presentation, I would like to say that let's get introduced to each other, right? So would you like to say which department you were at JU and which year did you graduate? But that we are not going to do personally here. But what we can do is that if you look into your chat, then you will see that there is a link which Pamela has shared. And if you can kindly click on that, or you copy that in your browser, and you will get a question. And so that you can fill it in there. And this will give us an interesting way of knowing each other. Would you kindly do that, please?
We do have non-JU listeners. Please do not feel left out.
No, I mean, for non-JU ones, you can just mention your department and your year. So that would be great. Yeah. Okay, so this is good to see who all are here, right? So thank you very much, Pamela, for helping us with this. And if I now go back to my share screen again, and if I start the discussion points, which I thought that I'll be discussing with you all, is I mean, I always feel that it is very important now in climate change debate. We need to understand where we can locate each one of us. As human beings, we need to understand we are part of the problem, but also have the keys for solution. And that's the good news. And we need to understand that this is an unprecedented challenge in human history, because humanity together in this fragmented world have never ever thought how to solve a global common problem. We always took a nationalistic approach and we solved that, but we do not know how to face a global challenge. And why this is a global challenge, I'll come to that very soon. But also let me say that how do I locate Jadavpur University in this whole discourse? I'm always very proud, that Jadavpur University holds a rich history of pioneering constructive, revolutionary, innovative ideas. I'm sure you all know that in 1906, when Britishers divided Bengal, then all the enlightened Bengalis, starting from Rabindranath Tagore, Aurobindo Ghosh, Raj Bihari Bose, Chittaranjan Das, Subhash Chandra Mullik, all of them came forward and contributed their endowments. Subhash Chandra Mullik endowed the whole land on which Jadavpur University, Jadavpur campus now stands. And everybody contributed their money. And their only goal was, we will not listen to the Britishers. We will not go to the Calcutta University, which is a British way of teaching us. So what we would do is that we would actually train our children with our nationalistic movement and nationalistic feeling, so that they can develop their own technology and have their own scientific understanding. And that's how they can take the country forward. And that's how Jadavpur University started. And then when they started the university, and with the first batch of students, they went to the Britishers asking for recognition of Jadavpur as an university. Britishers said, how can we give you this chance? So they were denied recognition as a university. And Jadavpur University at the time decided to go to Munich to get their students, the graduation degrees. And that continued until India got independence. So that's the history of Jadavpur University. So when the climate change debate started in India, Jadavpur University was also in the forefront, and the Ministry of Climate Change and Environment and Climate Change in India had a knowledge network to take forward the climate change research in India, and consider Jadavpur University as the first university among the other IITs and other institutions to be recognized for carrying forward this climate change research, just because it had its history of contribution in the scientific literature. So you know that Jadavpur University started the first energy school in India. Jadavpur University had the first chemical engineering department in Asia. So there are so many, the pioneering things that happened in Jadavpur University. That makes me always feel proud. And I just thought that meeting each one of you here in Boston is a great privilege for me. So what I wanted to start with is that climate change is an unprecedented challenge to human society. And why do we say that? Let's look into these four things, right? So if we look into from 1950 onwards, you can see how human population has grown in the world. And during the same time, how the CO2 emission increased in the global scale, globally, and also nitrogen emission also increased. So you can see how with human growth, the species in extinction happened, and how CO2 emission and nitrogen for providing food security increased. And these are unprecedented because this happened only over a little over a century, you can say. And what is the difference between these, the CO2 and N2O, and say, for example, what we see as the sulfur dioxide, nitrogen oxide, carbon monoxide, etc., are that these local pollutants, which causes air pollution in our cities, they are short-lived. They live there for 7 days once it is emitted, and then they die out, or they, change their character. But for the CO2, methane, CH4, N2O, and the fluorocarbons, they stay there for decades and centuries, and for thousands of years for the fluorocarbons. And they change the global atmospheric composition in terms of water cycle and the carbon cycle, and which leads to change in precipitation. So when we are talking of today's concentration level, we need to look backwards 100 years at least. And when we are emitting today, then we also need to look forward 100 years that these will continue to stay in the atmosphere and will continue to change our climate system. Many a times I face a question that, is this not a natural process? Why do we hold human being to be part of the problem? So the scientists now know it very well through the Earth system modeling, that these blue bands show that had there been a natural process of GHG concentration in the atmosphere, it would have been on this blue band path. And this is for the different regions. But if you look into this pink path, which shows that this is the natural, this is the actual path which we are seeing at what rate these are increasing. So this increase is not natural. And if you plot these with the earlier ones which we showed, then we can show that this temperature rise on the surface, on the land surface, and on the ocean system, and this is the global system, then we can see that natural cause does not explain this growth in temperature. And it's the human action which explains. And you can see in which region how much this is contributing. We can come back to this if you wish later in the question answer session. But let's see that why we said, from what kind of human activity we are emitting how much. That will give us a clue, no? That where to put our hands on and where we can contribute through our different roles, right? So basically it says that energy supply sector is really contributing the highest. And then we can see it's the industry, then forest sector because of the deforestation, and agriculture and transport sector. This is, I'm giving the year when IPCC won the Nobel Peace Prize. So this was the year when this report was published. But then we have more updated report, which I'm not quoting here, but these are only little higher than these, but then this pattern remains the same. And you know that it could prove in 2007 IPCC with enough evidence that it's a human action which is leading to this climate change. And that's why it shared the Nobel Peace Prize with Al Gore. And fortunately, I was also with them at that time. And what it says is that if this happens, that what happens to the human society? It says that there will be mass movement of people from one place to the other because of either flooding or for desertification, or here you can see where the desertification will happen and how the people will be moving out from those places to other places. And this is causing a global security concern for all the countries. Now, the question comes that where are we now? So the human activities actually have caused approximately 1 degree Celsius rise of global warming since pre-industrial level. And we are already seeing the consequences for people, nature, and the livelihood. So let me just explain this a little bit, which says that if we look into the warm water corals, then if at this 1 degree Celsius rise, we are already in the danger level. This color, the darker shade it gets, it's becoming more and more risky for those, right? So that we will lose all warm water corals if it is 2 degree rise over the pre-industrial level. But the mangroves are really resilient till 1.5 degree, but after that it starts dying if it goes more, but it's not as vulnerable as the warm water corals. So I can just go on saying, so it is about the Arctic region, it's the small scale low latitude fisheries, what will happen, the terrestrial ecosystem, coastal flooding, fluvial flooding, crop yield, tourism, how this is going to be impacted, and heat-related morbidity and mortality. So many of you must be coming from Calcutta, and you know that the Calcutta summers will be, say, going up to 43, 45 degrees in the summertime, which we have never experienced. So these are now the results which scientists can say with almost 99% of confidence level. So what it matters is that because we are already living in 1 degree Celsius and there is so much of damage to the human society and the ecosystem, which is our lifeline. So every bit of warming now matters, and every year matters, and every choice that we make matters. Every choice means in terms of, as I said, about the transport sector, about the industrial production and all those things, agricultural production, how we produce, what we use for generating electricity, all these things matters. And we are making those choices, right? Either as engineers or as consumers or as policymaker or as citizens or as investors. So let me just ask you, let's make it a little bit of dialogue. So I just want to know from you that what factor do you think is driving global warming the most? Population growth or income growth? Pamela is sharing one link in the chat, and this is on Slido. So if you can just click on that, and if you express your view, that would be of great help. Okay, very interesting. 55% think that it's the population growth which is driving climate change, and 45%, 42% feel that it's the income growth. So people are revising, that's great. So let's stop it, Pamela, and let's see what scientists have to say, right? So what the scientific community is saying. So if we look into this, you can see my slide, right? Yeah, no? Are you seeing my slide? Not yet. Okay, let me just see. These are all, the hardest part, the technology. doesn't matter. Let me see, share screen. Let me go back to this and then slideshow. Okay, so what it says is that basically IPCC made an assessment, and it shows that the population growth is explaining much less than the income growth. As we get richer and richer, we pollute more. So if you want to know, then I can tell you that 1% of global population now contributes 48% of the emission, and 98%, bottom 98%, produces only 43% of emission. So it's the richness with which the emission goes up. And you can see that the globally, actually, the world was decarbonizing. So they were making the carbon intensity of energy less and less as they were moving out to more nuclear energy, which are carbon free, more of renewable energy. But 2001 and 2010, we say that globally it was recarbonizing again. And this is explained because of income growth in China. So this exclusively shows the income growth of China, which has led to recarbonization again between 2001 and 2010. So it is the richness which matters, not the population growth. We say that you kill whole of South Asia, nothing will happen to the climate change because it is so tiny contribution. So what I want to say is that in 2015, 3 global agenda were considered, given all this scientific information. So one was about the Sustainable Development Goal, another one was Paris Agreement, and the third one was Sendai Framework for Disaster Risk Reduction. What you hear now in US and in every country, that Build Back Better, that was actually coming from the Sendai framework, right? So let's make another discussion point. I want to know that the SDGs, we don't have it. Okay. So what we do is that you just take a look at this, right? So what I wanted to know from you all, whether SDGs include what kind of actions, what is SDG and what is Sustainable Development Goal? I'm going to explain it. I just thought that let me just show you that what is that. So keep thinking over this, and then I'll show you that what it means. So globally, every nation, whether rich or poor, decided in 2015 that it's not only about climate action, but we have to also reduce poverty. We need to relieve the world from hunger. And so gender equality is important, quality education needs to be given, good health needs to be given. So there are 17 sustainable development goals which we need to achieve. Every goal has a target, and so that has to be achieved by 2030. And the other one was about that by 2030, we need to limit our emission to such an extent that 45% from 2010 level, we must reduce our emission so that globally, the temperature can stabilize at 1.5 degree. Now, let me tell you just a little bit of explanation on this. In Paris in 2015, all the countries politically decided to limit the climate warming at 1.5 degree, because otherwise many of the small island countries will get vanished because of the sea level rise. But for that, the IPCC provided the science, and which came out in 2018, the report, where it showed that that would mean if political goal needs to be achieved, then scientifically it means human society will need to reduce emissions by 45% compared to 2010 level by 2030. So remember, these are political goals, but scientifically supported. And so what it means is that to limit the warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius, CO2 emission would need to reach net zero around 2050. You must be hearing in different political referendum, and the industries are saying that how everybody is pledging or committing for net zero target. So net zero target comes from here, from IPCC report, which says that to stabilize at 1.5 degree, we need reduction in emission and compared how we do in different point of time. So now we have a discussion point, and which I want to know from you, what do you think for your personal decision? Do you think at high level of income, human well-being and more income growth, do they move together? Can you go to the Slido, which link Pamela is sharing with you in the chat, and provide your answer to that, please?
I'm probably seeing a different slide.
This is a different one. I'm sorry. Can you go to the next one, please? Yeah, this is the one. What do you think at high level of income, human well-being and income growth? So everybody says that more and more income growth is not needed. Okay, that's a very good idea. And let's see what science tells us, right? So science shows that for different rich countries, it has been shown, we could show this in 2012 Global Energy Assessment, and this continues to be true in many other future research, later research also that. So for countries like, rich countries like US and Germany, and, oh, sorry, I'm not sharing, right? Okay, hold on for a minute again. Yeah. Sorry. This is always a challenge, right? Share screen. Okay. So what it shows is that for rich countries, after a particular level of income, everybody has shown that the social welfare declines as income increases. For all the countries, it has been shown that it's not true that well-being increases with income growth. I mean, well-being means health, etc. Look, think of your SDG goals, right? So if you think of that, then it shows that they do not move together. And that also is very important message that we need to keep in mind when we earlier said that it's the income growth which is leading to more climate change. So how much of income growth do we need? So that's something very important for us to understand. So now we published another report, last year, where we showed that to achieve all these goals, which have been stated by politically and also with scientific backing from IPCC reports and many other think tanks, independent think tanks, they are saying. So it simply means that what we are going to hold for future, as Madhubani said, what we are leaving behind for our next generation. And even many of us say, when I think of Pamela, then in their a later generation, what we are leaving behind for them, then it shows that if we want to give them a leave behind a better world, then definitely we have to act in this decade. 2020 to 2030 is a most important decade when all climate action need to happen. The question is how how do we do this, and what do we need to do for reducing the emissions? So we usually say that 2020 is a very significant year because, interestingly, although we battled for the COVID-19 pandemic, but also marked a turning point in greenhouse gas emissions because it declined. The global emission declined. And so if we want to continue with 1.5 degree goal, then what it simply shows, all scientific studies are coming up now, and they're showing that each year, this much of decline need to continue for 1 decade and next 2 decades so that we can stabilize and reach the net zero goal. So the question is that, as we showed, that how we generate our electricity and what energy we use, the fossil fuel, is really the major contributor to this emission. So before I go further, I just would like to know from you all that what do you think till date the world has extracted coal, oil, gas more than the reserve left under the ground, or we have extracted less compared to what is still under the ground? I would request Pamela to show you the Slido, and I need your answer to that. Some of the folks are not good. It's okay. Sure. Mm-hmm. So 64% feel that we have extracted more and then what is left under the ground, right? So let's see what is there. Our science tells us, right? So this is what IPCC could show, that we have extracted only 1/3 of our total reserve of fossil fuels. So we have left under the ground more, right? Now the whole question to each and every citizen is that, do we extract more and emit more carbon? Because that's a concentrated carbon under the ground lying benign, right? Now we need to extract, burn it, and emit it in the air, or we leave it under the ground. If we leave it under the ground, then how do we generate our electricity? How do we run our cars? How do we make our rural houses cook their food? So there are several questions, right? I'm not answering all those questions, but I'm just raising these questions. So this is a big problem which globally we each one have to decide and make a choice. So what it says is that to get to 1.5 degree in 2020, we had 25% of electricity was from zero carbon sources, but it needs to be 65% by 2030. So you can imagine what kind of transformation in the electricity sector has to happen. So engineers in the electricity sector, what they should be looking for. As citizens, what we should be asking for. And as professional, how we can influence by buying share of which companies, and not buying share of which companies we need to know. So should we look into the portfolio of investment of the industries where they are spending money, in fossil fuel industries or where, and then we should buy. So we have to make a choice. That's why I said every year we have to make choice, right? And also we need to think that we need more electrification, and so that the electricity sector can be decarbonized, and that's how we are going to solve the problem. Are we buying all the energy efficient appliances? Are we aware of what is our home standard in terms of of efficiency of our Windows system, and everything we need to know. We need business models. That's why we have new business models for solar energy propagation among the households. So these are several questions which are connected to each one of these. So what we really need is that fossil fuel need to go out in next 10 years, and we need renewables and zero carbon. We need zero emission transport, right? So which means that we need either electrification of transport with falling battery prices, or we need hydrogen for our cars, or we need doubling of public transport. And also we need to fly less, and we need to have the shipping sector to become more efficient. My friends here, Ashok and Madhubani, need to really take forward this agenda. And we also need to change our demand, because our food and dietary system is a major shift is needed, because a major shift from high share of animal source products to plant-based diets and the reduction of food waste can significantly reduce emissions. We know that almost 40% of emissions can be reduced if we change our dietary habits. Heavy industries need to take on the go for more electrification and hydrogen and go for carbon removal. Everybody asks me, is India doing something? I always show this graph, which is our research, and which with one of my PhD student we did, and we show that in 1970s, for each output production, GDP production, India used to use 1 unit of energy. And now you see in 2000, it has decoupled, and it has made energy efficient technologies so much prevalent in industries. This is the Indian industries have taken on their own a lot of leadership, and government is now supporting with policies, not now, over past 10 years, so that we know that this is really happening in India. And this is the killer figure which I show globally, that yes, India is doing a lot, and that makes me feel proud. And we also need zero carbon human settlement. As I said, we need to know how our human settlements are designed. Can we have more public transport? Can we have walkability? And can we have a lesser carbon emission and most efficient buildings, zero emission buildings? We need zero emission buildings for any new building built today, and existing building stock need to decarbonize by at least 3% annually starting now. So basically, it also says that all these things, if we reduce our emissions, still that will not solve the problem. What we need is we need more sink capacity. That means we have to absorb more carbon from the atmosphere. And how do we do that? It's the restoration of forest, coastal ecosystem can do this, but there is also technological intervention which can happen, but that is little uncertain, not more uncertain technology actually. So basically it says that if nature-based solution can be ramped up. And if we do all these, then we have shown that actually 70% of emission, what we need to achieve by 2030, can be achieved in this decade. I mean, by 2050, whatever we need to achieve, 70% reduction can be achieved by 2030. That means in this decade. This decade is so that we can do many new economic activities, and which can lead to emission reduction. But what we need to keep in mind that we will only succeed if all of us take part in the process of accelerating this transition. And 2020 is a significant year, as I said. Right now, globally, if we look into the governments, then if we take a total, then we know that the global governments have $12.2 trillion on their table now for making a recovery in the post-COVID period, because this is a committed money. And for Paris compatible pathway, we only need 1.4 trillion. That means 10% of this needs to be spent in over next 4 years to make it Paris compatible. So 2020 is a significant year. The world has a unique opportunity to reshape the future in the new directions. So with this, what we need to understand that whether we will be able to enable this process in this 1 decade depends on policymakers, definitely, but businesses, investors, private sector, professionals. Like the professionals, as a professional, you can demand that you can work from home 3 days a week. Your mobility demand will be reduced, right? And then your car-led emission will be less. It's not to get a home comfort, but to do a better a contribution to the global level, and how you can influence your board meetings, saying that this is something which the private sector can show to the government that what they are contributing in terms of a reduction in climate change. And the financial sector has a very important role to play. Cities have an important role to play. Civil society and citizens, we all have roles to play. So this is something we must be demanding as voters, what we want for our future to look like for the benefit of our next generation. So in one word, I would like to know, after this discussion, what does the phrase climate change mean to you? Please click on the link which Pamela is going to share and type the word of your choice. You need to use only one word to mean what is your take-home word for climate change. Yeah. With this, I will stop here and thank you very much, and I hand it over to Madhubani.
Thank you so much, Joyshri. We have about 12 minutes for question answers. I expect our audience members to have questions for you, and I would like to go through those questions chronologically. So if you do have a question, would you be so kind to type your name in the chat box so that we can unmute you and have you ask that question?
But also, Madhubani, I'm just thinking if they, because we don't have a very large number, so if you want to raise their hand, then sure, you can also
raise hand is probably not the way to go for the younger generation. All of them have their cameras sort of sealed off. So
no, it doesn't matter. So still, no. They will do the electronic hand.
Oh, electronic raise.
They will go to the reaction and then they can raise their hand.
Yeah, if you have a question, please go ahead. And while they are still thinking whether they have a question or not,
Madhubani, just one sec. So people have started raising their hand. You just need to look into that because Ashok had a hand. Ashok, why did you take out your hand? Yeah. I can see Ashok has a hand.
Yeah, can you hear me now?
We can.
So good evening, Didi. It was a fantastic discussion, and thanks for coming in the evening, and it's a real real treat actually to hear from you on this topic. So my question was this: that the first question was that when we say we have, let's say, $12 trillion on the table, and when I look at my own shipping industry. 95% of the shipping industry, or even more, is actually private. So all the measures that we in the industry are trying to take for the 2050 IMO goals, of course, are basically the investment done by the private sector. So do you mean to say that the part of this money that you're actually talking about will actually be received by the private sector through some kind of a government agency, or is it, or do you mean this is the total amount of money that includes both public and private funds that are available on the table?
But this is only the government sector, what they have raised the money in terms of COVID recovery package. So this is not the private money. Now there is a whole discourse that private sector, they're already making profit by doing adverse impact on the climate. So it's for them to invest to repair the damage. So they are coming back for their own pledges. I would say in India, the industries, what they did, that's not only for Indian industries, globally they have done. Industries were the pioneer actually. So they were all private sector. And why did they do? Because that was their image building among the shareholders. That was the image building in the market. They are following the sustainable development goals. So that made them popular among the within the market, and that gave them a competitive edge. So private sector has their own business goal to do this. So what is needed is that government need to make some policies that they need to do that. So for industries, that's how new policies actually came up. And many shipping big businesses, they are committing that they are going to go by 2040, 2050 to net zero. So they will change their technologies, etc. They're already committing.
I do have a question, if I may go ahead and ask. So what is happening in Jadavpur University? Are there any initiatives vis-a-vis climate change action?
Yeah, actually, I'll just give an example that, as you know, that we have a global change program, and that is providing all the knowledge support to the Ministry of Environment and Climate Change, to the UNFCCC in the IPCC process, and in many other things. So right now we are providing, scientific evidence to the new town that how they can become a smart city, but also climate smart city. So that is something which Jadavpur University is providing. And there, we have very young students, they all work, and they are now, those who worked there, they are now all over the world. They are also participating in the IPCC process also. And we do take interns in global change program. So we do have, and we have the courses, and we have the PhD programs for doing this. And we have economics of climate change and environmental economics teaching from very long time in Jadavpur University. That's why I said that, we are pioneer in many things.
Can you also tell us which departments are involved in the global change program in Jadavpur University?
Sorry. Actually, the Global Change Program is a university-wide program where all the engineering departments and science and social science faculties, they all participate. We have sociology, we have the humanities department also participate, because they try to see how the oral history of different tribes, they talk about adjusting to the climate change, what they have. So this is the kind of research we do, but also, say, for example, from electrical engineering, from mechanical engineering. So we all work together. So this is a true multidisciplinary research that we have been doing. From 2001, we have this global change program, but then departmentally also there are courses which are taught. So we do have it for very, very long time.
I believe Indrani Ghosh has a question. If we could unmute Indrani, please.
Can you hear me?
Indrani.
Yes, of course.
Jai Shri, thank you so much for your time and for speaking with us on a weeknight evening. Really appreciate your very thoughtful and insightful remarks on this topic. This topic of climate change is very close to my heart as well. I work in the area of climate resilience. That's
wow.
I'm a water resources engineer by training. I actually did my bachelor's in metallurgical engineering from Jadavpur and then moved on to an interdisciplinary program in environmental and water resources. And I'm working in the in this field of resilience, climate resilience, for about 10 years now, more on the industry and the practitioner side. But
Exactly.
your the plots and the graphs and the information that you shared are so valuable. Many things that I learned new. I am more on the adaptation and resilience side. Your remarks are very much spot on the mitigation side. I do think that I'm curious to hear from you. I think both of those pathways need to proceed at the same time. IPCC has showed already that no matter how much we try to curb our emissions, whatever we've done thus far are being felt now, right? Like the flooding that we saw in Kolkata, the flooding that we saw in Germany, the unprecedented deaths that we saw in Tennessee just this summer, right? Like we're not even going back to what happened in 2018 or 2015. We're grappling with that as a humanity today. The effects of what we did and did not do are being felt today. So it's really important that we take action today based on everything that you shared, so we don't see this exacerbate. But at the same time, I think we have to be adapting ourselves to be resilient so that we are able to recover from the effects that we saw, the extreme events of heat and flooding. So I'm really curious to hear your thoughts on, how
Absolutely.
there are both of these pathways, it seems, need to move together.
Yeah, absolutely. You were just right. And that's why I showed you in the beginning that coral reefs and what we will be losing. And that's the kind of human system and the ecosystem which are going to be impacted, right? And I have not shown you because it will take many days, right? For Himalayas also what it means, right? So we have done that also. There is a HIMAP report you must be knowing. So basically why I'm emphasizing more in this decade on mitigation is whatever we have done, suppose if it goes to 1.5 degree, still we can adapt, but we know by now also that with this 1 degree rise, there are so much of damages which are irreparable, right? So we need to adapt, but it is now proved that we cannot adapt to going beyond 2 degree. So we cannot afford to go beyond 2 degree at all. I mean, I should not say as a climate scientist to talk about 2 degree even, because most of the coastlines will be gone with 2 degree. The sea level will continue to rise for 100 years. So mitigation is now unavoidable. We have to do adaptation. In developing countries, poor countries have been talking about this adaptation for very, very, very long time. But the rich countries thought they will escape this because they are rich, they have better infrastructure, so they thought that they'll be surviving and they will be better adapted. Now the burnt of it is coming, and so people are realizing that adaptation is not possible beyond the level. Now, given all the national pledges of national determined contributions in Paris, right? In the post-Paris also, every country pledged that how much they're going to reduce. With that also, we are bound to go to 3 degrees Celsius rise by the mid of the century, and which is impossible for humanity and ecosystem to adapt. So adaptation is a short-term solution, but it cannot be a long-term solution. Given the limits to adaptation, we have to also think of mitigation from today so that it doesn't cross 1.5 degree anyway. So that's a real challenge now. That's why I focus more on that.
Jayshriti, there's a question from Joyanta. Thank you so much, Indrani. Joyanta is asking, does electric car really help reducing carbon emission, considering the amount of fossil fuels used, battery manufacturing, etc.?
Yeah, so basically, electrification, mode electrification is suggested with the idea that electricity sector itself will be decarbonized, right? So if you say that electricity production is going to be or the manufacturing is going to be based on fossil fuel, then it is not going to do any good. So, so we need to think it together, because I said one step is that we must make fossil fuel to go out of the whole picture by next one decade. So if that is so, then we cannot have fossil fuel for production of manufacturing sector or the electricity sector.
Thank you, Jayashree. I think Monideep has a question, and in the essence of time, this will be the last question of this session. Please unmute Monideep. Go ahead, Monideep.
Thank you, Madhuvarnidi. Thank you, Jayashree. This was a great talk, and I learned a lot of things today. You had a slide which talked about how India is making advances to energy efficiency, and it's basically changing the graph, right? Would you be able to talk some more about it, and how an advanced country like, let's say, you talked about Germany and US, can learn from it and scale up to those changes?
No. There is, they have already learned. They did all the advancement in 80s, and India and other developing countries took it up from mid 90s. So there was a kind of technology learning process also. So energy efficiency has been happening in US for very, very long time. The US labs like Lawrence Berkeley Lab, the Pacific Lab, they all are, especially the Lawrence Berkeley Lab works on the appliance standards. So which earlier government of US took off all the incentives on energy efficiency. That was a dangerous policy, which is coming back now again for incentives for energy efficiency. So basically the developed countries have been doing this for quite a long time. And the developing countries like China, India, they are also doing a lot. So this is important to show to the world, because people think that India is not doing anything, so this is very important that we build these evidences. But say, for example, in many African countries, and say when I work now on Bangladesh, because I'm now holding the position of Bangabandhu chair. So this is something which makes me to delve into the Bangladesh energy sector. So it was my surprise that their building codes do not have energy efficiency standards. They do not have enough trained personnel to implement the energy efficiency standards in industries and all. So there is need for institution building. Like in India, we have Bureau of Energy Efficiency, but that doesn't exist in many developing countries, new developing countries. So there are a lot of scope. So this is a big business model, and it just pays on its own. So you do not need any government grant or anything. You just need a policy for that. Because I don't know, if you look into your India home, then you must be seeing that you have the 5-star air conditioner, 5-star refrigerator, or 4-star refrigerator. You have 4-star, I would say that change it to 5-star next time when you go home, right? So these are the things we need to be doing. Now, all fans are energy efficient ones. There is nothing in the market available as non-efficient ones. So these are the things which are happening. This is a huge business model. So the market itself makes it, so you need the technology. And as I said, so our training, our teaching process in the universities need to do all these. Like we have in electrical engineering, the Illumination Science Center, who shows how you can manage your daylight through the window design, etc., so that you can have better, less energy efficient buildings. So these things are happening, but yeah, they have been doing for a long time.
Thank you, Jayashree. Thank you, Monideep. Like all good things, this talk also must come to an end. We are trying to be as punctual as possible. I thank all of you from the bottom of my heart for participating. And as a parting shot, we would like to see what you thought was climate change in one word. Thank you again, Joyashree.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
Nice. Yep. Disaster right in the middle. Thank you all. Take care.
Yeah. Good. Thank you. Thank you.